Helix-9 never pretended to be elegant. The station hung in its assigned orbit like an old veteran who had outlived every war. That tried to make it obsolete. Its rings layered, heavy, and patched through decades of temporary repairs rotated at slightly mismatched speeds. That imperfect engineering choice kept the habitat stable. But it also sent a constant tremble through every corridor and bulkhead. The vibration was so consistent that people who lived here stopped noticing it. Visitors mistook it for machinery or nerves. Lady Thrin noticed it the way you notice a heartbeat. She felt the station shiver through the soles of her boots. As she walked, the faint rhythmic buzz rising through her bones like a private metronome. It steadied her. Helix-9 did not do stillness. In space, stillness was a lie anyway. She moved with a diplomat's economy, no wasted gestures, no hurried steps. The light in this wing was neutral, bright and cool, meant to discourage loitering. It made her skin look almost luminous against the dark fall of her hair, which she kept pulled back in a simple tie instead of the ornate clasps favored by her own people. The choice was deliberate. Less ornament meant fewer questions, fewer glances, fewer assumptions. It rarely worked. Most beings assumed she was human at first. A tall woman, a composed expression, form attire tailored to interspecies standards. Then they saw her ears long, tapered, subtly curved beyond the usual human silhouette. Extending past where hair would hide them, and the assumption shifted. People became careful, polite, distant, as if manners were a form of understanding. Thrin found that amusing, in the way one finds a recurring joke amusing even when it's tiresome. She paused beside a transparent bulkhead that opened onto the trade ring below. The view was an organized chaos, cargo drones darting like metallic, insects between pylons, docking clumps locking and releasing, airlocks cycling in steady rotation. A steady stream of commerce gave Helix-9 its reputation as neutral ground, neutral enough that enemies would trade here, while plotting each other's ruin in private. Her schedule for the day was a dense wall of obligations, agreements to finalize, appearances to make, smiles to deploy with precision. She could already hear the phrases she would offer: mutual benefit, shared stability, unfortunate misunderstanding. Diplomacy, in practice, was often a polite way of saying please don't shoot anyone today. Something in her sleeve pulsed gently against her wrist, her private comm implant, vibrating with a message she didn't need to read. Marcus, she thought, and the corners of her mouth softened. He would be reminding her again that nutrient, gel, did not count as a meal, that the body, even hers, benefited from actual food, that she could not hold together a fragile multi-system treaty by sheer stubbornness and caffeine. She allowed herself a quiet smile, brief enough that no one passing would be sure it was real. Marrying a human covert operative had not been part of her training. It hadn't even been part of her imagination. Her instructors had taught her to read power structures, to speak in ways that soothed volatile leaders, to project comm as a weapon. They had not taught her what to do with a man who lived like a ghost, silent, alert, endlessly practical except when he wasn't. Their marriage existed in a narrow gap between sealed files and unspoken agreements. Officially, it did not exist at all. Unofficially, it was the most solid thing in either of their lives. Sometimes she wondered which of them lied more easily. Then she pictured Marcus in formal wearing, comfortable, scowling, tugging at a collar as if it were a new sand. Decided she still held the advantage. Footsteps approached with the measured tempo of people on duty. A small group of technicians rounded the corridor corner, uniforms marked with maintenance sigils and the grease stains that served as Helix-9's true badges of authenticity. Thrin's attention sharpened. The timing was to neat. Helix-9 ran on controlled disorder. Paperwork was endless, but schedules were flexible, and crews rarely arrived in tidy formation unless someone had arranged it. In her experience, anything that looked too smooth on this station deserved suspicion. The lead technician slowed and dipped his head. His regulation mask filtered his voice into a flat, practiced tone. "Lady Thrin, routine systems verification. We'll need to escort you for a brief check." His gaze flicked to her ears, not long enough to be openly rude, but long enough to confirm recognition. Most people did it without thinking. Most people never learned that her hearing caught not only sounds, but intent, the faint change in breath, the micro-hesitation of a lie. Thrin lifted one eyebrow. "Escort me where?" she asked, her voice mild enough to be mistaken for cooperative. The technician's posture tightened a fraction to a secure corridor segment. Administrative oversight. Your presence was not logged. A second technician jumped in too quickly, as if patching a weak spot. "We apologize. It's a paperwork issue." Thrin considered her options. Diplomatic authority would force them to back off if they were station staff. A knee strike would force them to the floor if they were not. Neither option offered clarity. Clarity mattered more than comfort. "Very well," she said, and stepped forward. "Lead slowly. I dislike surprises." The group shifted to flank her, subtle as a net drawing closed. They turned into a side corridor where the lighting dimmed and the hum of foot traffic fell away. The station's vibration changed, not by much, a half-degree shift in resonance. But her body read it instantly, the way one reads a familiar language. Along with it came a faint harmonic tone to clean, to focused, an active field generator. Not station standard. Interesting, she thought, and sighed inwardly, somewhere. Marcus would be about to become very difficult. They rounded another corner, and the corridor behind them shimmered not visibly, but in the way air feels different when it holds charge. The field snapped into place like a door shutting without sound. The technicians stopped pretending. One of them grinned, exposing teeth that did not belong to the species he wore as a mask. "You're expensive," he said. "Try to cooperate. Paperwork's a nightmare when people bleed." Thrin clasped her hands loosely in front of her, as if this were a meeting room rather than an abduction. "You have made several inaccurate assumptions today," she replied. "But we can address them after you finish embarrassing yourselves." The man laughed. "You'll be in a holding cell. Nothing to negotiate. Most holding cells," Thrin said, "are unpleasant. Some are instructive." They guided her toward a concealed hatch in the bulkhead. No alarms sounded. No security teams appeared. Helix-9 continued its indifferent rotation, commerce humming beneath her feet, the universe pretending nothing had happened. Thrin focused on the station's familiar shiver like an anchor. Marcus would notice the silence. He always noticed. She almost pitied the people who believed a diplomat was easy prey. Almost. Marcus Jericho was tightening a loose panel on a shuttle that belonged to a jittery civilian trader when reality seemed to stutter. It wasn't dramatic. No klaxons. No flashing red lights. Just an absence like the sudden dropout of a background melody you hadn't realized you were relying on. He froze with the magnetic wrench still in hand. The trader shifted nervously. Is that bad? Marcus glanced at the shuttle, then at the man. Depends how you define bad. He returned the panel to place, engaged the locks, and wiped his hands on a rag. His wrist implant should have pulsed by now. Thrin's check-ins were unofficial, unrecorded, and more reliable than station timekeeping. She never missed them, not because she was obligated, but because she chose to. Silence from her didn't feel peaceful. It felt deliberate, and Thrin did not get deliberate with him unless something forced her. He handed the trader the wrench. Your shuttle will fly, he said. Don't push it. Don't insult it. Definitely don't court it. The trader blinked. That's helpful. Marcus was already stepping away. He crossed into a public terminal bay and pulled up station movement logs. Everything looked normal to normal. No diplomatic transit entries. No escort request codes. No security pings. Helix-9 documented everything. Even a broken air filter generated 3 forms and a complaint. Marcus leaned closer, eyes scanning for what wasn't there. Come on, he muttered. Show me where you hid the lie. He rerouted the logs through an old military filter he'd written years ago and never fully erased. The display flickered. Blank spaces appeared like missing teeth. Maintenance crews listed without origin points. Equipment tags that resolved into static when examined. A transport's signature smudged as though someone had dragged a finger across it. He exhaled slowly. Maintenance, he said, and his voice went flat. Thrin had once teased him for how humans buried violence under words like routine and procedure. She had said her people preferred ceremony. If you must do something ugly, at least be honest about it. Marcus tapped his comm again. Still nothing. His expression settled into that quiet calm that frightened people who understood him. He left the terminal bay, shrugging out of his civilian jacket as he walked. Underneath, he looked like nothing important. Plain clothes, practical boots, an unremarkable silhouette. That was how he survived. In a private transit pod, he opened a sealed compartment beneath the seat and removed a small matte device that hummed with restrained power. Unregistered, illegal across most civilized systems. Familiar in his palm like an old scar. All right, he murmured. Let's not make this messy. He detached the pod and guided it manually, ignoring recommended paths. He followed the ghost trail of the unlogged transport, slipping along routes only smugglers and veterans used. Legal corridors, forgotten vectors, blind spots carved into station traffic by habit. The trail led away from Helix-9 toward an asteroid belt flagged as commercially depleted. Worthless rock and abandoned tunnels, the kind of place no one checked unless they were hunting something. Marcus smiled thinly. Classic, he said. Pick somewhere everyone ignores. As the asteroid grew in the viewport, he cut engines and let inertia do the work. The pod drifted, becoming just another piece of debris among 1,000. The asteroid wasn't dead. Lights glimmered along seams where mining cuts had been widened into corridors. Heat signatures traced a hidden structure beneath the rock. A fortress that wore the disguise of an old extraction site. Marcus checked his gear. Then, despite himself, he shook his head. "You're going to tell me I skipped lunch," he muttered into the quiet. "And you'll be right." He launched toward the asteroid, a dark figure against starlight, moving with the certainty of someone who had made worse decisions and survived them. The holding cell was cleaner than Thrin expected, which was either courtesy or contempt. A soft blue energy barrier sealed the open side. Its arm sat just low enough to irritate. A frequency designed to unsettle without causing harm. Thrin chose to focus on it because irritation was preferable to fear. And fear, while natural, was a luxury she rarely allowed herself. Her captors had removed her outer layers with exaggerated caution, as if her clothing might be weaponized. They had left her boots, apparently deciding footwear was too mundane to be dangerous. That mistake delighted her. Two guards stood beyond the barrier, armored and heavily armed, arguing in low voices. "I'm telling you," one said, "she's to come. Nobody stays that calm. She's a diplomat." The other hissed back. They train for sitting in chairs and lying politely. Thrin cleared her throat. Both guards jolted. "If it comforts you," she said, tone gentle, "I am calm because panic rarely improves outcomes. Also because your field generator is slightly misaligned." They stared as if she'd announced the ceiling was on fire. "What?" one demanded. "The harmonic resonance," Thrin explained, as if offering a helpful tip at a social gathering. "It will hold, but it's inefficient. You are wasting power. I assume you are not charging me for that." One guard turned to the other. "I told you we should have read the manual." Thrin smiled pleasantly. "If it reassures you further. I have no intention of escaping." Yet, they moved a cautious step back, left alone again. Thrin angled her ears and listened not to voices, but to the building itself. Every structure had a rhythm. This one breathed like an industrial beast, ventilation whispering, distant machinery clattering, heavy transports shifting mass deeper within the rock, mining equipment repurposed into something uglier. She mapped it instinctively, counted delays, measured gravity fluctuations, noted which corridors carried footsteps and which carried silence. A flicker of light rippled down the hall. Thrin's ears twitched. Another flicker, subtle, controlled. In the distance, one guard frowned at his wrist display. "Did you feel that?" "Drills," the other said, too quickly. "This place shakes." Thrin leaned back, folding her arms. "Oh," she murmured, and allowed herself a small, private satisfaction. "He's here." The nearest guard snapped his head toward her cell. "What did you say?" "I said." Thrin replied calmly, "You might want to check your perimeter sensors, particularly the ones you disabled to conserve power." Their comm units crackled with static. Half-formed messages stuttered, then died. The corridor lights dimmed slowly, almost politely, like someone lowering volume to avoid disturbing a conversation. A dull thud echoed from somewhere unseen, heavy and final. One guard raised his rifle, aiming down the corridor. Control. Report. Nothing answered. The other guard swallowed. Maybe it's a glitch, Thrin sighed. You should stop saying that. The floor vibrated again. The energy barrier wavered for half a second, its hum stuttering before stabilizing. Someone wasn't breaking the system outright. Someone was testing it. Then, from the darkness, a voice spoke, casual, steady, infuriatingly calm. You're standing in the wrong place. One guard fired. The shot went wide, scorching the wall. The lights dropped out completely. When they returned, one guard lay unconscious, placed carefully against the bulkhead like a sleeping child. The other stood frozen, weapon trembling, eyes wide. Marcus Jericho stepped into view as if he belonged there. No visible armor, no insignia, just tired eyes and a smile that never reached them. "Hi," he said to the guard. "I'm here for my wife." The guard blinked, confusion fighting panic. "You're what?" Marcus gestured past him. "The diplomat, long ears, correcting your power consumption." "That one." Thrin lifted a hand and waved from inside the barrier. "Hello." The guard's weapon lowered slightly, his brain struggling to keep up. "We thought she was valuable," he managed. Marcus's smile sharpened. "Yeah, that's where you messed up." The guard began to speak again, but his armor suddenly locked rigid. Marcus had flicked a control node with a precise motion, disabling the suit with surgical efficiency. The guard collapsed like a statue with the power cut. Marcus stepped over him and approached the barrier, his attention fixed on Thrin like a tether. "Are you hurt?" he asked, and the tension behind the words betrayed him more than his face. "Only offended," Thrin said, gently touching her fingers to the field. "They underestimated my boots." Marcus exhaled. "Good, because I'm about to be deeply impolite on your behalf." He set the matte device against the barrier's emitter junction. It hummed, then sang a brief rising note that made the air feel warm. Outside, deeper in the asteroid, something failed with a sound like metal giving up on dignity. The barrier collapsed with a sigh, blue light folding inward before vanishing. Thrin stepped out immediately, as if she'd been waiting for the universe to grant permission rather than the machine. Marcus caught her wrist automatically, scanning her as though injuries could be found by force of will. "I told you," Thrin murmured, squeezing his hand. "You got kidnapped," Marcus replied, already pulling her into motion. "That's not told you material." "It did disrupt my schedule," she said, as if that were the true crime. Behind them, alarms finally found the courage to scream. One, then many, until the fortress seemed to be yelling at itself in panic. Emergency lights washed the corridor in harsh red. Marcus grimaced. "We've reached the loud part." "You destabilized their grid," Thrin observed, head tilted as she listened. "Only slightly," Marcus said. "They built everything on one control spine. It offended me." Thrin laughed, soft and real, the sound strangely bright against the metal corridor. "You broke a fortress out of principle and efficiency," Marcus admitted. "Raiders appeared at intersections, weapons raised only to drop out of the fight moments later as their systems failed, suits locking them into immobile confusion. Marcus moved like a quiet storm. No wasted shots, no unnecessary violence, just relentless removal of threats. At one junction, a cluster of raiders skidded to a halt, staring. "That's her," one hissed. "That's the hostage." Marcus didn't slow. "Former hostage," he corrected. "Now active liability." They fired. A brief shimmering shield flared in front of Marcus's hand, catching bolts that would have killed. Thrin watched the raiders' expressions shift as confidence drained. "Interfere, gentlemen," she called calmly, raising her voice just enough to carry. "I advise you to run. This structure is no longer diplomatically stable." "What does that even?" someone started. Gravity lurched violently, cutting him off. The corridor groaned as internal mechanisms tore free under stress. Somewhere, massive mining arms broke from their mounts, crashing through partitions. Marcus pulled Thrin into an access alcove as the corridor twisted. "That answers it," he said. "Evac route BU label evacuation routes?" Thrin asked, bracing herself against the shaking. "A, B, C," Marcus said, "and improvise. We're not at the last one yet." They burst into a vast industrial chamber, once a processing hub, now an arena of failing systems. Conveyor belts sparked. Gravity wells blinked erratically, sending cargo crates drifting like startled fish. Raiders ran in every direction, no longer sure if they were under attack or simply watching their own base fall apart. On a raised platform, a heavier armored leader shouted through an amplifier, trying to regain control. "Contain them, she's worth." Marcus fired once. The support strut under the platform shattered. Metal screamed as the structure collapsed, cutting the speech into rubble. A lot of noise. Marcus finished, as if completing a thought. Thrin's humor faded, her gaze steady on him. "They will know now." Marcus nodded once. "Yes, our councils," Thrin said, voice quieter. "Your superiors, I know." Another shock rocked the chamber. Emergency lights bathed everything red. Thrin reached for Marcus's hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Then we stop hiding," she said. Marcus met her eyes amid the chaos, something unspoken passing between them like a vow. "I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted. They ran. In the hangar bay, the exterior doors struggled against failing regulators, opening in uneven pulses. Vacuum tugged at loose debris, drawing it outward in slow spirals. They dove behind cargo crates as blaster fire cracked overhead. "Next time," Marcus muttered, peering around the crate, "we take a vacation somewhere boring. A quiet moon. No fortresses. You say that every time." Thrin replied, adjusting the torn edge of her sleeve with maddening composure. "And you keep getting kidnapped," Marcus shot back. "There's a pattern." Thrin's smile flashed. "I married a diplomat. Trouble follows." Raiders poured into the hangar from multiple access points, their earlier panic replaced by desperate coordination. Defense turrets overhead twitched uselessly, confused by the conflicting commands Marcus had fed them. A heavy shuttle at the far end of the bay warmed its engines in uneven surges escape. If they could reach it, Marcus checked his device, lips tightening. We're running low on favors from physics. Thrin listened, ears angled forward. Their command structure is fractured, she said. They are arguing over priority targets. Marcus glanced at her. Let me guess. You're still worth more alive. For the moment. He leaned closer. Any ideas? Thrin's eyes tracked movement, stress fractures, exposed conduits. Yes, she said. Be extremely distracting, Marcus huffed. That's already my entire personality. Before he could object, Thrin stepped out from cover, raising her hands. Her voice carried across the hangar, calm and clear. Please stop shooting, she called. You are damaging your own infrastructure. For a heartbeat, it worked. Confusion rippled through the raiders. Several hesitated, unprepared for politeness in the middle of a decompression emergency. Marcus used the heartbeat. He surged forward, disabling weapons and locking armor with precise shots. A gravity fluctuation sent 3 raiders drifting upward. Swearing as they bounced off the ceiling, Thrin moved faster than anyone expected, darting to a fallen console. Her fingers flew over mismatched interfaces, human systems, and alien protocols pulling control. Where it had been ripped away. You can fly that shuttle? She asked without looking up. Yes, Marcus said, vaulting over a crate. Can you drop the hangar shields already? A blast tore open part of the hangar wall, exposing raw asteroid rock. The fortress screamed now, systems failing to fast to even report. One raider, frantic, shouted, "She's not just a hostage. She's with him." The words hit the room like a weapon. Silence fell, brief, stunned. With him, someone echoed, disbelieving. Marcus reached Thrin's side, firing over her shoulder. Technically, he said, she's married to me. That landed harder than the explosions. A few raiders froze. One laughed, high and hysterical. Another dropped his rifle entirely. You're telling me, someone breathed, we kidnapped a Black Ops operative's wife? Thrin glanced back at Marcus, eyebrow raised. You make it sound terribly informal. Marcus's grin was tight. You left out the part where I get upset. The hangar shields flickered and dropped. Warning tones rose into something shrill and final. Air began to rush outward in earnest. That's our cue, Marcus said. They sprinted. Marcus dove into the cockpit, hands moving across controls with brutal confidence. Thrin sealed the hatch behind them, locking it just as debris slammed against the hull. The shuttle lurched forward, engines protesting as Marcus forced it through the ragged opening. The fortress filled the viewport cracks, spreading across its surface like veins. Internal fires blooming under rock. Behind them, it tore itself apart, scattering flame and metal into the dark. Thrin strapped in beside him, watching the destruction without flinching. They will talk, she said quietly. I know, Marcus replied, steering clear of debris. He glanced at her, softer now that the immediate danger was behind them. Are you angry? Thrin considered, then shook her head. No, relieved. Though I expect several councils will attempt to arrest us. Marcus laughed, breathless and real. Let them try. Thrin reached for his hand, fingers intertwining as the shuttle jumped into faster-than-light, carrying them into a future where secrecy would no longer protect them and might no longer be necessary. When the stars snapped back into shape and reality stopped stretching, they drifted in silence for a moment, letting the aftermath settle. Thrin checked incoming transmissions with infuriating calm. "We are officially wanted by at least 3 councils," she reported, "possibly 4. One is still debating jurisdiction," Marcus snorted. "Only 4. We're getting better." They docked at a small relay station, quiet, neutral, unnoticed. No ceremonies, no crowds. A handful of travelers pretending not to stare at the diplomat with long ears, and the human beside her who moved like a danger even when standing still. Messages flooded in, formal summons, cautious inquiries, a surprisingly polite apology from a representative who had once insisted their marriage was theoretically impossible. Thrin deleted most without reading. "Growth," she said, pocketing the device. "I am learning restraint." Marcus laughed. "I'm proud of you." On an observation deck overlooking a blue-white star, they stood together without hiding, reflected in the glass like a truth the universe had finally stopped denying. "I used to think protecting you meant keeping you invisible," Marcus said. "If no one knew, no one could target you." Thrin turned to him fully. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held the quiet weight of someone who understood consequences better than most. "And now?" she asked. "Now I know hiding was its own kind of harm," Marcus admitted. "To you, to me, trust works better when it isn't classified." Thrin studied him, seeing the change plainly. The man who once lived as a shadow now stood in the light beside her, unarmored in the ways that mattered most. "You are different," she said softly. "Less alone," Marcus shrugged. "Awkward with anything that sounded like praise." "I had help." A station announcement interrupted them, requesting their presence in a secure chamber. Marcus rolled his eyes. That didn't take long. In the chamber, council representatives appeared as holograms faces from multiple species, expressions ranging from stern to baffled to quietly fascinated. Accusations flew. Protocols were recited. Concerns were stacked like bricks. Thrin listened with patience sharpened into a blade. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and immovable. She spoke of choice, of unity that wasn't forged by treaties alone, but by shared risk and shared honesty. She spoke of a future where fear did not dictate policy, where alliances could be real instead of performative. Marcus said little. When he did, it was unvarnished truth. No threats, no apologies, just an unwavering refusal to pretend their bond was a mistake. When the holograms faded, the room felt strangely lighter. "Well," Marcus said, exhaling, "that went better than expected." Thrin laughed fully, genuinely. "They did not exile us." "High bar," Marcus agreed. Later, at the airlock, Thrin paused, gaze fixed on the stars beyond. "What now?" she asked. Marcus considered the void, the endless possibilities, the dangers and freedoms it offered in equal measure. "Now we stop running," he said. "We let them see us, and if they object," Thrin added, already smiling. Marcus's grin turned sharp. "Then we negotiate, side by side." They stepped into their ship. The hatch sealed behind them. Engines warmed with a steady hum. The past loosened its grip. Ahead was uncertainty, conflict, change, councils that would argue until the stars burned out. But there was also honesty, finally unhidden, and the strange relief of no longer having to pretend that love was a liability for the first time. In a long time, neither of them reached for silence. They reached for each other.